For the past 8 years, Donald Trump and the Republican Party have been creating hysteria around immigration. During the 2016 campaign, the former president brought an extreme type of rhetoric that hadn't been seen since the likes of Eisenhower. He made sweeping accusations about Mexican migrants, referring to them as drug dealers and mentally ill, and then advocated for a border wall that would cost billions of dollars. Over the years, news outlets like Fox News have fanned the flames, causing immigration to skyrocket as a national concern. According to a Gallup poll, 48% of Americans said they care about illegal immigration a great deal. Commenters like Tucker Carlson and Jesse Waters constantly recycle stories of drug dealers and edge cases of immigrants murdering American citizens, and as a result, the American population has pushed extremely right on the issue. Despite Trump's original rhetoric being extreme compared to his counterparts, it was slightly more tame than it is now. In 2015, he said,
"They're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people."
An absolutely horrific statement that one can only assume that last line was disingenuous, even back then. But his 2024 version doesn't even attempt to message in a more moderate manner. Now he makes absolute statements calling migrants animals and not human in a recent Michigan speech.
The 22-year-old nursing student in Georgia who was barbarically murdered by an illegal alien animal. The Democrats say, please don't call them animals, they're humans. I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans, they're animals.
The Democratic Party has trailed right behind, mirroring 2020 Republicans. Despite Biden running against the border wall in the last election, once in office, he continued to fund it and pushed for a Republican border bill to be passed. Kamala Harris and other politicians who pledged to take a more liberal approach to immigration in 2020 now call for tough reform and carry on the fentanyl narrative, despite 90% of the drug crossing through normal points of entry by US citizens, according to the Department of Homeland Security. So what truly separates the two parties? Time? The lack of pushback on either side has led to the culmination of back-to-back fake stories that are targeting this vulnerable group. The first, in Aurora, Colorado, that claimed a Venezuelan gang had taken over an apartment. The second, in Springfield, Ohio, where Haitian immigrants were accused by their neighbors of eating cats. So how did two stories on two opposite sides of the country get picked up by the internet and recited by the former president on national television, only to incite bomb threats and Proud Boy marches? In Aurora, Colorado, at the Edge Apartments, a woman takes a video of several young men carrying guns through the halls and what appears to be breaking into an apartment. That video is then circulated on social media and goes viral. It was picked up by conservatives who link the video to the presence of the Tren de Aragua gang members. This is a narrative that the owner of the Edge Apartments had been floating around for months when he sent a letter to the police saying that the Venezuelan gang had, quote, taken control. However, there was a huge flaw in this entire story. None of it was true. There are still no answers for what truly occurred in that viral video. The area is not a stranger to crime, but the claim that they are gang members is, at best, a rumor. But by the time anyone began to engage in any sort of counter-messaging, the story was out of hand. Conservatives were claiming the Hells Angels were heading to the apartments to handle it, and everyone now knew Aurora for all the wrong reasons. As stated before, the management company of the Edge Apartments, CBZ Management, started the false rumors. The owner used the story as a scapegoat for his not one, but 3 slum-like apartments in the city. There were reports of trash overflowing. The management company refused to pay a private trash company, rat and bug infestations, sewage backups, deteriorating infrastructure, some of the worst health violations these residents had to live in. Due to the horrid conditions these buildings were left in, the owner was charged in a municipal court and had one of them condemned. The mayor in a statement pointed out a glaring sign. I believe fundamentally that there is some element of truth to all of this, but it's interesting that when we have the problems of the allegations of criminal activities and gang activity, the pattern is with one ownership, and the pattern is, quite frankly, that they are out-of-state slumlords, Kaufman said. Aurora police have been investigating gang activity in the city, but say there is no gang taking over the apartment. But now residents of the apartment fear eviction and going outside. The building could very well face condemnation similarly to one of CBC's other properties, leaving them with nowhere to go. Residents have also received threatening racist messages, calling them animals, and violent threats against their safety, and even people coming to their building and with signs reading, "We're going to take Aurora back." There is no denying that the increase in violent rhetoric regular citizens are engaging in, believing these residents don't have a place in Aurora simply because they are brown immigrants, stems from Trump's virulently racist messaging. Sadly, it has become all too acceptable to think this way. Springfield, Ohio, about 1,300 miles away from Aurora, this hateful rhetoric was boiling up once more. Rumors began when a Facebook post accusing Haitians of eating cats in Springfield was posted on YouTube. The story went viral among Republicans, similar to the Aurora story, and was repeated by online conservative commentators like Matt Walsh and YouTube vultures, a better word, clout chasers like Tyler Oliveira. It spread rapidly, reaching its peak when vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance repeated the accusations several times on national TV, even after the story was proven false. Trump then repeated it during the debate, adding to the falsehoods by claiming that Haitians were eating dogs as well. Local police, though, once again, denied all of the accusations. Haitians were drawn to live in Springfield not only to escape political violence in their country, but also due to the low cost of living and high demand for work. Haiti has been in crisis for years with growing famine, gang violence, and deteriorating material conditions. This is all the culmination of U.S. destabilization and intervention, from Clinton's failed Operation Uphold Democracy to the use of U.S. aid in Haiti to fill the pockets of for-profit American organizations. A Jacobin article wrote, "Getting money into local hands is not just effective in terms of responding to the needs on the ground, because the people on the ground know what they need, but it also stimulates the local economy. If you bypass and undermine local organizations, that's going to have long-term impacts." And we are seeing those long-term impacts today, especially after their former president's corruption and subsequent assassination. Haiti is in a dire state. Over the past years, the town of Springfield has seen 20,000 Haitians migrate to the area. The city's population has been declining, and industries had fled from the area, leaving the town desolate. This immigration could very well build back the town's economy, but some of the residents are having trouble accepting the change. Springfield residents have complained about rent increases, strains on local schools and hospitals, and dangerous drivers. One of the stories that has been continuously invoked by politicians like J.D. Vance is the death of a young boy. He was killed in a car accident when a Haitian immigrant collided with a school bus. The father, Nathan Clark, has spoken on the weaponization of his son's death.
Politicians, Bernie Moreno, Chip Roy, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump. They have spoken my son's name and used his death for political gain. This needs to stop now. They are not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed to mention Aiden Clark from Springfield, Ohio. I will listen to them one more time to hear their apologies.
When J.D. Vance was confronted on CNN, he ended up revealing he made up the stories about Haitian immigrants in order to help his constituents. But J.D. forgets he is the sitting senator in the state of Ohio. Where was he when the rent prices were skyrocketing? When the economy was tanking? Spreading lies about people who are now a part of his constituency, just as much as the residents that were previously there, doesn't fix their material conditions. In fact, it's only brought violence to them. The situation escalated from cat memes on TikTok and remixes of Donald Trump's comments to very real, uncontrollable situations. Governor Mike DeWine had to call in the state troopers to guard schools after the city received 30 bomb threats. The white supremacist group the Proud Boys also marched through the city, sparking fear among everyone. I didn't mention this in my original recording, but I think it's important to point out that the reason why American citizens are so easily captured by this rhetoric is not because, of course, it's true, which I've shown through the data that it's not, but because neither party offers any of us anything. So we might as well go for the party that gives us someone to blame. Both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are beholden to corporate benefactors, which in turn ends up looking like American citizens not getting their material conditions met. I mean, especially when we look at the Springfield situation, there's complaints of rent costs going up, but neither party is actually helping Springfield residents with helping those costs go down. I mean, Joe Biden, I think, either talked about doing a rent cap or did one. So every now and then you will get the Democratic Party actually doing progressive economic policies. But even with Kamala Harris's campaign right now, with her choosing Waltz, we really thought she was going to go way harder with progressive policies, especially with her track record in 2020. But she's run scared like every other Democrat whenever Republicans start to call her a communist, but like they're gonna call you that anyway. So just as long as you do right by the people, you can actually, since her campaign is so concerned with capturing Republicans instead of just capturing the very obvious constituency that will actually vote for her, which is the leftists, but whatever. If she really wants to do both of those things and capture both of them, actually progressive economic policies will get Republicans to vote for her. Because as long as you are actually taking care of the people, no one cares. Like, that actually has proven to, in places like Kentucky with Andy Bashar, has actually proven to get Republican voters to vote for you. I mean, he has done really progressive policies. He even has done like some progressive culture, like socio policies, like with vetoing an anti-trans bill. But like, people in Kentucky are still gonna vote for him because he's doing right by them. But since the broader Democratic Party is not doing that, and neither is the Republican Party, a lot of people instead just choose to say, well, instead of driving myself crazy, I'm just gonna look for someone to blame. And the Republican Party is giving me the answers, so why not go with what they're saying? I always say this, that it is incredibly depressing to be a leftist. It's depressing to know all of the data and all of the facts and then sit there and be like, well, but there's nothing I can really do about it. And even through the protest and the organizing, a lot of times it's going to take years and decades to actually show any sort of change. So it's depressing. Actually acknowledge the truth. It's much easier to live in this delusional fantasy land where immigrants, if you listen to Donald Trump, he literally will blame immigrants for everything. Housing costs going up, you not having health care or good health care. All of that is the immigrant's fault, except he could have actually helped you with that, and JD Vance in Ohio could have helped Springfield with that, but seems like no one wants to do it, right? So it's much easier for Springfield residents to blame Haitian immigrants for their rent going up instead of actually looking at the people who are rising their rent, which is the Capitol owners. The woman who originally posted the false story recently retracted her account and initial statement, writing, "It just exploded into something I didn't mean to happen." Illustrates that white supremacist rhetoric doesn't just affect brown and black people, but everyone involved. Now, I want to dive a little bit deeper into America's history with anti-immigrant rhetoric because it's not new. at all. In fact, we are only, at this point, once again, as with everything I talk about, repeating history. Now, anti-immigrant rhetoric has been deeply ingrained into America, despite every citizen except Native Americans originating from immigrants at some point. I would say modern anti-immigrant rhetoric started around the mid to late 1800s when the country saw a huge influx of immigration. You know, we all know Ellis Island, and the stories around that, which not only did the country at the time have like kind of, is eugenics the right word, like really discriminatory policies, especially around people with disabilities, but also once people were fully immigrated into America, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants then discriminated against Eastern Europeans, Germans, and the Irish. You know, at this point we consider those people white, basically, but at the time, the in-group and what was considered white, they were not a part of. Which leads into a conversation about whiteness and how it represents power. But basically all you need to know is that race is essentially just a social construct. It has been ever-changing throughout time. At this time in the mid to late 1800s, like I said, it was purely just, you know, English people that were considered white, maybe French, I wouldn't say Italian, but it was a very small group. But now even today we see that in-group expanding even more, with Hispanic people slightly being added into the fold as well. So it is based on power, based on the in-group, who has the power, who we are okay with having the power, which will never include people that look like me. But anyways, Trump's position, though, like I said in the beginning, is very similar to another US president back in the 50s, Eisenhower, who carried out the largest mass deportation in American history. Trump has actually doted on Eisenhower's policy before and plans to do it again if reelected, which would then be, again, the largest mass deportation, because it wouldn't just be 1 million people, it could be upwards of like 15 million people, which, as I describe how Eisenhower carried out this mass deportation, you will see that could very well be horrific, not just call back to Eisenhower, but maybe even to like Nazi Germany. Eisenhower used military-style tactics to remove immigrants, some of who were actually American citizens. Millions had entered illegally at the turn of the century through joint immigration programs. But with the help of the Mexican government, which sought to return Mexican nationals to alleviate a domestic labor shortage, Border Patrol agents and local officials used military techniques and engaged in a coordinated tactical operation to remove the immigrants. Along the way, they used widespread racial stereotypes to justify their sometimes brutal treatment of immigrants. Inside the United States, anti-Mexican sentiment was pervasive, and harsh portrayals of Mexican immigrants as dirty, disease-bearing, and irresponsible were the norm. Now, that feels to me like kind of what's happening right now. Trump can very easily paint not only just Mexicans now, but Venezuelans and anybody that comes from the southern border as drug dealers and murderers and from insane asylums, which I really like the theory. I think it's so funny. I really like the theory that he just thinks asylum seekers means that they come from like mental institutions, because he's a dumbass. So I think that makes sense, right? I think that's just what he's saying. I like that headcanon personally. I mean, the process of removing millions and millions of people could very well look just as brutal and horrific as when Eisenhower did it. And these 8 years of dehumanization will make that process justified in the eyes of Americans. But I don't think the people who are advocating for this, the constituents, I don't think they understand just how much money that's going to take. I mean, you have to carry out an operation like that is going to, I assume, cost a lot of money. If you don't care about the moral aspect of it, as well as just the horrific sight of barging into homes And that process, similarly to Eisenhower's, will show that it's not about undocumented or documented. It's purely about the color of your skin. It will be brutal, it will be violent, it will involve concentration camps. Like I said, it will be just literally a Hitlerian style policy in order to achieve such a thing. But I am lucky enough to go to a school that has a lot of international students. So what did I do? I sat down and I talked to people who were actually from Venezuela and Haiti to see their perspective on the growing anti-immigrant rhetoric in America. So I talked to Gabby, who is of Haitian descent, and Elisa, who is a Venezuelan student, to get their perspective on these false stories against their own communities. The residents at the Edge apartment in Aurora and the Haitian residents in Springfield have received verbal threats and bomb threats due to the hysteria. Does the rhetoric around immigration increase your personal fears around safety or social acceptability? Personally, for me, no, because I'm blessed to say I've grown up in places, and even moving to America while all of this is going on, I'm not in fear or anything, because Atlanta and Miami, where I was growing up, it's just full of immigrants and very diverse. People here tend to be more open-minded. Over there, they know it's not true. So personally, I do not feel a difference in my safety, but if I were living in a more rural city, I definitely would have. Honestly, where I live right now, not really, but you never know who might come across who isn't too happy with people who aren't American living nearby or sharing the same spaces. Personally, I've been fortunate enough not to experience major fears or social rejection in the US, but I'm well aware that many immigrants deal with this daily, which is really sad and frustrating. Do you feel politicians have done enough to counter the falsehoods around both Aurora and Springfield? I don't really think politicians have done anything. I mean, personally, it's not like I'm tuned into politics daily, but like the fact that I heard about what was being said in politics about everything going on in Springfield means that I should have easily had access to anyone who was countering those claims. And I see people doing their best effort to do that, but nobody in politics. Nobody that has actual power and influence. I haven't really seen much effort from politicians to counter the misinformation, at least not from any sources I follow. There's been a lot of joking around about it, which feels very Gen Z-like response, but not much in a way of serious statements or information from public figures. Misinformation like this is really harmful to immigrant communities and needs to be addressed quickly before it leads to more fear and hatred towards people just trying to live their lives. Why do you think people are so quick to spread misinformation, especially surrounding immigrants? Unfortunately, there are bad people everywhere in every country, city, and community. What I've noticed is when one immigrant out of millions does something wrong or out of the norm, it gets blown out of proportion and people start generalizing. It's human nature to group things together, but it's sad that this only seems to happen with bad stuff. Positive stories and immigrants don't spread as quickly, but when there's something negative, people are quick to share it, and that's what tends to stick. I think because it's been done in the past, in America, immigrants especially aren't taken as seriously, and no one has ever come to their defense. Even in their countries, like with all the political warfare in Haiti too, I know there's a lot that has to do with America. If America is not over there helping them with all the chaos and everything, I definitely do not think they'll be defending or protecting their name at all. But it's very easy to spread because no one really cares, and there's just like, oh, they're immigrants. If all else fails, they have a country to go back to, which in many cases I know is not actually the case. This negative attitude towards immigration is not just seen in America, but also across Western Europe. What steps do you think we need to take in order to change our policies and attitudes towards immigration? I don't think there's much we can do in policies personally. It's more so, like you said, an attitude thing. And that's just going to, honestly, I don't think it will change. Only because if you look at racism in America, it's been going on for so long. We've had policies to stop like racist acts, but at the end of the day, racism still exists all across Western Europe and all across America. So it's really just a change of heart thing. And I think that takes generations at a time. It's just about spreading awareness and being open-minded, but that's more personal. I've traveled around Europe, and it's clear that mass immigration is a global issue. People are immigrating to invade other countries or steal jobs. They're often just trying to escape difficult, dangerous, or unsustainable situations in their home countries. Larger, more stable countries need to have more empathy for this. Most immigrants just want a better life for themselves and their families, and to improve their future, their education, or simply to survive. As a Venezuelan, I've seen millions of people leave my country in search of opportunities, and I meet Venezuelans everywhere. I've been lucky to immigrate to the US and live comfortably, but many others can't, whether because of policies, financial barriers, or lack of resources. At the same time, as immigrants, we need to remember that when we move to a new country, we should respect its laws and culture. That doesn't mean we can't express our own culture, but we do need to adapt and appreciate the opportunity we've been given. But this has to go both ways. We need the rest of society to help us move forward too. It's hard to contribute and be part of a new country when we're all constantly fighting stereotypes or misinformation. We're not trying to change our country, just to be a part of it and contribute. As the progressive alternative, Democrats should be pushing back against their counterparts' narratives. They should know these numbers and statistics about fentanyl, or that immigrants commit significantly less crime than natural-born citizens. When Fox News anchors regurgitate the same murder case, Democrats should bring up that on average, undocumented immigrants are only involved in an average of 60 murder cases yearly, compared to the national average of 20,000. There are no party advocates for comprehensive reform or a pathway for citizenship. Instead, we are just left to steep in our hysteria. That's all for me today. I would like to thank my patrons and my YouTube members for all of the support as always, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.